Welcome to today's episode. It is Tuesday, April 7th, New Year's Day. You're listening to the podcast where we discuss the most recent installments of a different series every show. And last year, Guy Ritchie was partially responsible for one of the best series of the year, has like an 8.3 on IMDb. Mobland just wrapped its second season. And this year, Ritchie's returning, but to a more established franchise, one that he's worked on before. But for an icebreaker for this episode, what is your favorite Guy Ritchie film and why?
It's a toss-up because Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, which I believe was his first film, was so good just
I
because
think
of
it was his second, but yeah.
the amount of it's just jam-packed with information all about diverting the audience's expectations.
Does anybody speak coherent English in that film? Like, that is the
You
start
can
of...
you can understand it more than Snatch, which is also a great film that he made. I did like The Gentleman. I remember I saw that in theaters as well.
Everybody always seems to be snazzily dressed in his later outfits.
Uh-huh.
But, like, in his first... In Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, weren't they, like, all in wife beaters and
Yeah,
stuff?
I know. I think that it was made on a very low budget.
And so
the
as he's gotten a budget, he's just invested into the wardrobe.
Yep.
Yes.
But also he's good at making TV shows because you said Mobland, which was your second favorite show of 2025. The Gentleman was my second favorite show of 2024. So he surprisingly knows how to make TV shows.
And Aladdin was your favorite movie of, like, 2023.
Did you write the screenplay for it or something?
He did direct it, right? I believe he was in charge of that entire thing.
Well-
You can take him and say Guy Ritchie's Aladdin. Yeah.
And that's why it's like he's a talented director and he can make really enjoyable films, but also depending on his projects, he can get a little lost in himself. I think of things like King Arthur, Operation Fortune, Fountain of Youth, like all those aren't great films. So it really depends on what Guy Ritchie you're going to get.
Okay, well, he's not the same, and I would sometimes confuse him with Guy Pearce.
The actor?
Yeah.
I think that he's more like Edgar Wright when it comes to directing, where, like you were kind of saying before, quick cuts, snazzy, kind of untraditional ways to tell a story, maybe making a scene try to be more interesting than it actually is.
He's a little Michael Bay-ish.
Oh, very much so. But I also was wondering what happened with the third Sherlock Holmes films, because I know he did the first two, and then as of a couple of years ago, I heard that like Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law were still ready to do it. I thought they
I
were
think in
working on
2011 it
scripts.
got greenlit, and
Right.
then it went into production hell or whatever, and then in 2021 they switched directors. So I think it did leave Ritchie's
So he
like,
doesn't have it
sphere.
anymore.
And then now I don't know where it is, but he obviously returned to Sherlock.
Mhm.
You've got a young trend going on with young Rock, young Sheldon, a young Doctor's Notebook, and now young Sherlock.
The title reminds me a lot of a Buster Keaton like 1940 short film, Sherlock Jr., I think is what it was called.
Interesting, because that was predating when the books that they're adapting here took place. So not took place, but the books were made from 2010 to like 2015. They're very recent, and so they loosely adapted them. Though they were by Andrew Lane, who is a big Sherlock fan as well as a big Doctor Who fan. I think he's written for them as well. What they did though was that the books took the Sherlock character from being 14 years old
Huh.
and then went through his like 19th year where he was in college.
Here
And
he starts
here,
out as 19.
they
yeah.
Game of Thrones did, and they started him at 19 at Oxford, right?
Mhm.
It's an 8-episode series. It's on Prime. If you don't want spoilers, then stop listening now. Every episode is titled The Case of, and then whatever, what have you. You know, it's
Yeah.
kind of like with Friends, and what was the Friends thing? The one with, right?
Yeah, right.
Showrunner is there's two of them. Matthew Parkhill, which he was also responsible for the creation of Hotel Costiera, which in a
the
weird
other
way,
Amazon show. Yeah.
which in a weird way is kind of similar, like the vibes I was getting, the teamwork whenever there was like a mystery afoot. It's about a
mean-
fixer in like this random Italian hotel.
Right, but I felt like young Sherlock was more, I guess, kind of grounded in mystery than Hotel Costiera was.
Yes, it also takes place in like 1871. Then you have Peter Harness, who is more of that old-timey kind of English vibe with Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. He was partially dealing with that TV show when it came out. Rotten Tomatoes says that this doesn't try to recreate Conan Doyle's work. Rather, it is a liberal adaptation. It has the signature blend that Guy Ritchie brings with his entertainment sly style and ingratiating characters. Would you agree?
Yeah, because there are some characters that, if you're aware of Sherlock, are very much absent in this TV series. This is way
Oh, name them.
before. Oh, well, you have Miss Hudson, she's not there.
Mhm.
Irene Adler doesn't
That's
show
true.
up. Most namely, John Watson. Dr. Watson is
He's
not
busy
in the
on
show.
CBS being canceled.
And this is long before 221 Baker Street, right? This is long before Hounds of Baskerville, kind of
Yes, they did
obvious.
film in several places around the UK, Bristol. There's like this famous cathedral that they've also used for Doctor Who. But yeah, no, they didn't use London specifically as a setting. They went to Spain. I think they went
Oh,
to
cool.
Spain for the last few episodes because
Yeah.
that's when they went out of country,
'Cause
right?
they yeah, I think that was supposed to be at least in the show, was supposed to be Paris and Constantinople,
Yeah.
so it makes sense. Yeah, and throughout the week of me watching this show, it has consistently risen in Amazon's top 10. First, it was, like, number 6, then number 5, then suddenly number 3.
All right. So, yeah, for the podcast, let's address your assumptions going into the show. Then we'll talk about the cast, the overall story, the season arc, thoughts of how that went, then the shows it reminded you of, if we haven't already discussed those by then, random facts, critical reception, and ultimately your rating. This is so. What'd you think?
I thought that it was going to be a very dry TV show. Even with Guy Ritchie's name,
Hmm.
associated with it, just the name Young Sherlock, I wasn't really interested in
Sounds like
seeing him.
PBS.
Yeah, that's exactly what it sounds like. I wasn't interested in him kind of, going through the motions. A lot like Sherlock and Daughter, right? I gave that a passing grade, but I felt kind of the same about this that I did with
Did
that.
you think it was gonna be like Endeavor, though, where, like, the mystery would actually be really compelling and by the end you'd be really into it?
I thought that the all 8 episodes were going to kind of be of the same, like, cut of the same cloth, where it
So
was
so
like,
you were just, like, completely out of it to start with. You were just like,
yes,
"I'm not gonna like this."
right.
You went in there with negative expectations.
Yes, I
That's
did.
interesting. So this is a new Sherlock, but
Mhm.
an old setting, like we said, 1871. For era context, you take the Grey House and Dickinson, that was and also The Abandons,
Yeah.
and that was all beforehand by a few years, and then Death by Lightning, 1883, and The Gilded Age was a few years ahead. So, like, what is it exactly in time with? The Buccaneers, which is a show we never reviewed, but I did read the, like, half book that was
I think
released.
oh, yeah, that's the one that, like, never got finished, right?
Yes, and they've
Yeah.
made several seasons of it, I think, on Apple TV, but they start you off with Sherlock. He's granted a position of scout
Yeah.
as a collegiate, servant at Oxford, of all places, following a brief stint in Newgate Prison for petty theft. So
Mhm.
he already has a criminal record. Just like Jimmy from Better Call Saul, he's this prequel is talking about him like he's trying to redeem himself right at the start.
Right. He's still mischievous, he's still charismatic and brilliant as, every iteration of him is, but he also is very childish, more childish than maybe you would think, and he's traumatized a lot by from what they show in the first scene, which is Beatrice, or as they call her, B, in the show, his sister who disappeared and ended up dying.
Isn't that kinda similar to Five Nights at Freddy's?
I didn't make that connection. I made the connection with Sherlock season 4 where that was almost entirely what the last season was about.
Looking for his sister?
No, his sister ends up being the villain in that
Oh,
season.
it's weird how, post because he used to only have a brother.
Right.
Or not Moriarty, but, what's his face?
Mycroft.
Mycroft was his only sibling, and now you got Enola Holmes, who's apparently his sister. You got
Well, the
Beatrice.
thing about Sherlock that I didn't like, that at least this show started off being like, no, he has a sister, is that they never mentioned in Sherlock him having a sister until that final season where they just kind of threw her
Right,
in.
but Sherlock ended before young Sherlock even was
Right.
created, like, even written, or it was at least during that time period. Did you recognize anybody who was playing anyone?
I mean, obviously, Colin Firth. I was surprised to see.
Sir Bucephalus
I
Hodge.
was like, he's in a TV show? I
Do you
don't even know the last one he would have been in.
Right, it's crazy that he was, like, a minor character, right?
Mhm.
He was only in a couple of the
Yeah.
episodes, but, like, that name, Bucephalus, I knew I'd heard it before. I think it is the Alexander the Great's horse. I believe that's where it's
So
at.
you think that that's where they got it from?
Also, it's really funny that, like, Kingsman, the King's Speech, and then now he's, like, one of the top dudes at
He's the
Oxford.
dean of Oxford.
Yes, and now he's the king of Oxford. But where do you or when do you think Oxford was made? Or, like,
Oh, well, I mean, they say here 1800, so I would go with, like, maybe I'll go with 1800.
no, it's 1096. It is the
Oh, okay.
oldest English-speaking university
Shows you how
ever.
much I know.
Right, but, like, so you only recognize Colin Firth.
Yeah.
That's interesting because Sherlock himself is played by Hero Fiennes Tiffin. Does that name mean anything to you?
Not in
Okay.
red.
Then James Moriarty is played by Donal Finn. He's gotten a lot of credit for
I
his
was
role
gonna
here.
say, I think he's the best character, the
He's
best
from Wheel of
actor
Time.
probably in
I
the
don't think
show.
he's done too much besides that. Now, Silas Holmes, who plays Sherlock's
The father.
father, right? Joseph Fiennes.
Yes.
That name mean anything to you?
Well, Fiennes, reminds me a lot of Ralph Fiennes.
Right. And then Cordelia Holmes was played by Natasha McElhorn from Californication, Designated
Mm.
Survivor, Halo. She's been around forever. How do you think she did as the mom?
She did a good job. She did a good job playing kind of unhinged at first, and then you realize she's been right all along about all the things that she was suspecting.
And then Mycroft Holmes was played by Max Irons. And Max Irons, you saw a star in Condor way back in the day
Okay, yeah, that
because
was
his father, Jeremy Irons, is rather famous.
that. Okay, so they just kept on getting kind of siblings or family that had that were
This
famous in it.
definitely has a little bit of nepotism into it, but I would consider it the most unk series that we've done, literally, because when I say Joseph Fiennes played Silas Holmes, that is the uncle of Sherlock Holmes' hero Fiennes Tiffin.
Wow.
So his dad is played by his uncle, and furthermore, hero Fiennes Tiffin played in Harry Potter. He was Tom Riddle. Tom Riddle being Voldemort, a younger version
Right.
of him,
Yeah.
in like
Like
the
the
Half Blood
kid.
Prince.
Right.
Who played Voldemort?
Well, Ralph
Ralph
Fiennes.
Fiennes, his other uncle. He played a younger version of his other uncle. His actual dad, I don't think, is an actor. So, like, he's got a whole family lineage of famous people.
There's some weird like dark family relations like
Well, there's nothing bad
I
about it, but
meant
yeah,
dark as in the Netflix TV series with like kind of the family tree that they had there.
yeah. I
But
have
yeah,
another trivia fact for you. Has Jeremy Irons ever played in a Sherlock Holmes setting?
not that I would guess.
He has as Sherlock Holmes in an SNL clip back in the
Okay. Well,
90s.
I mean that's a little bit of a stretch there. You
Yeah,
know.
but it just seems like they had a pretty strong cast. The last one that I don't think has been in too much, maybe Three Body Problem.
Mm.
Zine Tseng, she played the princess from the Qing Dynasty who shows up, Princess Xuan. Is that how you pronounce
Yeah,
it?
Shuan, and that ends up being Xiao Wei later on.
Ah, so she changes her name, just like
Yeah.
Beatrice, because she's originally introduced as someone else as well,
Well,
right?
she is supposed to be a different character in the TV
So let's
show.
transition into the actual 8 episodes. I hear they're kind of like blocks. There's like the first 3 take place in Oxford, the next 3 are kind of like somewhere else, and then the
Yeah, there
last
are
3.
so many like the main mystery of the TV series kept changing because at first it seems like at this gala because like you said Sherlock he's been hired as the scout of Oxford. These ancient scrolls that the princess brought along has gone missing and they end up realizing that the scrolls actually were inside the school the whole entire time and really this was just a distraction because at this gala there was a bomb underneath the school that has been planted.
Right.
And as we learn more about it, because everyone was able to get out except for one professor. In fact, Sherlock even ends up having to go to jail because of it. We learn that there are 4 professors that were targeted: Thompson, the one that ended up dying, Roberts, Enright, and Malik. And so that takes up the first 3 episodes because they get a picture. Sherlock is broken out of jail by Moriarty, but they get a picture and they realize that those 4 professors were the ones that were seated closest to the bomb. So they were the ones that were supposed to end up being the ones that die.
And you saw how the bomb was like jerry-rigged, right? So
Yeah.
you're in the library, and then there's like a secret tunnel that leads behind the
They
auditorium.
realized, I think, that cabinet or some type of dresser was out of place, and when they moved it, they saw a hole, so they went through
It feels very like convenient in this series that happens so much, where he
Mhm.
keeps on finding hidden rooms behind bookcases, and it makes me want to go back to that time period and just see if that's as often. Like, who actually had? I feel it's like one guy in like a random thing, and that story just blew up, and so everybody's like, "I want my own hidden bookcase
It
or
happens all
whatever."
the time. Well, yeah, because there's a bookcase even in the TV show, but I know that sometimes they'll do like a piano. You have to sit a certain amount of keys, and then
Yes,
some type
Goonies
of
style,
some type of like secret door will end up opening that way.
right?
Always reminds me a little bit of Parasite, even though it's not exactly the
So
same.
you mentioned that in the first episode, Sherlock and Moriarty, they strike a friendship.
Yes,
Mu-
even though yeah, they're supposed to be mortal enemies, and I assume by the end of the series we're going to really get that. It's even hinted a little bit at the end of season 1 that there may be a
It
rift
does feel
starting
like
to
the last 2
form.
episodes go also really heavy in the fact that Moriarty has taken that turn. Like,
Yeah.
the second he kills someone, right?
Right.
But we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah, so I think that they first meet when, because they both are the ones that are trying to figure out what happened to the scrolls. And they
Right.
first meet when he's doing, like, some math problems and talking to Sherlock.
And just like every detective series that we've done, like the glass going in one way or the other, they were able to
Yeah.
like figure out that, yeah, you said
The
they
way
didn't
that
actually leak.
yeah.
The thing that I wanted to compare it to, though, was that the bomb, which is jerry rigged with a bunch of like dynamite that's like against a ticking whatever, like it wasn't just a clock, it was like a fancy
Yeah.
clock. They didn't disarm it, but it reminded me so much of the Chuck premiere or the Chuck pilot, because that also introduced you to Sarah and Casey
Right.
and his team, and then they run in there and like I think it was at like was it an adult film thing
I
where
don't even
they
remember the Chuck premiere as well as you do.
well, I think that Zachary Levi's character was like right in front of the bomb, and then he chooses, or he no. What happens is that he gets Morgan, right, to send him a virus for like a porn
Oh,
site, and
right,
it like
right.
disarms the
Irene
bomb.
Demova,
But
yeah.
because the internet doesn't exist here in the Sherlock world, they can't do that,
Right,
and
they
so the
just have
bomb
to
actually just
evacuate.
goes up.
Yeah, when you saw the bomb go off, I had to laugh at that. I was wondering how much of the action was practical effects, because I know that Guy Ritchie, he likes to use practical effects
They
as
made a big
opposed to
deal of the fact
VFX.
that they didn't use a lot of AI to show the settings, but I do not know if the actual explosion. I would assume they weren't blowing up a lot for this series, especially when they were dealing with famous cathedrals and
Yeah.
such. But you never know. Yeah. So the first episodes, it also feels like he's doing a Good Will Hunting impression, where he's walking in, he's hearing the professors speak to classes, and as a like a special janitor servant dude,
Yeah.
he's just coming in there and kind of correcting the
Well,
professors.
he still has, like, even kind of, the mischievous side that I was talking about earlier, because even though Hodge seems to like him, Sherlock decides to pickpocket his watch, and even Moriarty, caught hold of that when he did so.
What was he gonna do with that?
I
Was he
don't know,
doing it
so
for the love of the game,
I
or
think that's always what it is with Sherlock, just love the game.
it also yeah, go ahead.
I don't even think he ends up selling it. But yeah, then the second episode, it's just really them trying to figure out what's going on. But Roberts, the second professor, he ends up dying. So there's two professors that are dead and two that are left. Something that we should also mention is that Shuan in the first episode, the princess, when she was going to the gala that Oxford was hosting, they ended up getting ambushed, and the person that she was in the carriage with ends up getting shot, and she is almost kidnapped. But then suddenly out of nowhere, and I could already tell that this was Guy Ritchie kind of doing his thing, she somehow knows how to fight and is able to break away.
Right.
And it
She's a
seemed,
martial artist.
and I was like, that doesn't seem like the same person that we just saw terrified in the carriage if she's able to just fight her way out of it.
Are there
So
2 of them? Is this a, Padme situation where you have, a duplicate queen?
that's basically where it went, yeah, because Xiao Wei, she has this personal vendetta. She's been tasked with killing these 4 professors, and they ended up taking Xuan, the princess, and they
Mhm.
ended up keeping her in, like, this side place.
In this side place. The other, relationship that you should touch upon is Mycroft. So it doesn't
Yes.
seem like Sherlock and Mycroft are at quite the same odds that they are at later on in life.
Yeah, because Mycroft is even part of the reason why Sherlock was able to get the scout position at Oxford.
He, like, bailed him out.
Yeah, right after he got fresh out of jail, he was, yeah, they seem to be kind of copacetic.
So the first couple episodes, you're saying, take place in Oxford. They're solving crimes, but people are still getting killed off. When does it transition from Oxford over to like the rest of the family?
Right. So in the third episode, it ends up being that Enright, who is the other professor, she ends up dying because he's thrown off a clock tower by Xuan, which is really just Xiao Wei. And they use the last professor as bait to catch the fake Xuan, and then she's arrested. So that's when the third episode ends. But the fourth episode, that's what you're talking about. That's when we get the backstory on all the family. Sherlock, throughout the first 3 episodes, have been seeing his mother Cordelia, and Cordelia at first, she's kind of locked up in this asylum, seems to be talking crazy, but she's like, there's this humming that I keep hearing, and at the very beginning of the fourth episode, Sherlock hears it. He ends up opening up or like breaking down this wall that has a recording device in it,
Right.
and one of the professors, Professor Malik, he's been listening in on Cordelia the whole entire time.
Right.
And she, also Cordelia has been talking about man with a bird claws cane that almost exactly describes Professor Malik, the cane that he ends up walking with.
What is the point of Malik visiting?
It's just supposed to be very suspicious because Malik is tied to the murders.
Oh, okay,
We
so
don't
he's a
exactly
bad
know.
guy.
Yeah, and exactly, and he's one of the people that kind of yeah, he has a connection with the father, Silas.
When you said that there was a ringing, I thought you were gonna go to, like, that 60 Minutes story about the CIA dudes who've been, like, constantly attacked by, like, some high-pitched,
Mhm.
weapon that Russia has created and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, man, it starts with an H, I think, because it's, like, based on the place that it started at, but then you went a completely different direction. She's just being tapped into,
Yeah,
right?
no, and so he ends up breaking her out and brings her to a safe
And
house.
she acts like the one episode I saw with her just kinda walking around, she acts pretty normal for someone who's in an asylum.
Yeah, I was that was actually one of my things where it's like she actually is 100% okay. She's able to like travel to Paris, able to kind of keep up with
And
Jane
Mycroft doesn't
Moriarty.
seem to have a problem with his mom being busted out either.
Not really, but he's I don't think is as focused on getting her out as Sherlock was once he saw the recording device in play.
Would you compare the middle episodes sort of to like Dexter Original Sin, where in the later seasons of Dexter, he was sort of a loner until Harrison became
Mhm.
involved. But like when you go back to Original Sin, where they had it seemed like it was like a fun family drama, like with Deborah there and the dad there. It seemed like they all were dancing at certain points in the season. So like
It wouldn't be my
in
first
this,
comparison.
well, I'm saying the prequel here, it's like Sherlock was never really that social with his family in the later season or
Right.
in the Sherlock we know. But in this version, it seems like things were pretty nice.
At first, yeah, because even when he sees Silas at the end of the 4th episode,
Yes.
he's happy to see
I'm
his
not
father
talking
there.
about Silas as much, but like, yeah, so Silas is up to no good.
Yeah, and also I should mention that he talks to the fake Shuan, and Shuan ends up telling the safe house where the real princess is found there.
Is there a will they, won't they with Shuan?
I think that they kind of hint at it a couple
Well,
episodes
I know
later.
that like later on, Moriarty has his own relationship
Yeah.
going on, but like, yeah, I was just curious if they hooked up Sherlock or not.
But episode 4 had the biggest surprise in it to me, which is that Professor Malik, because once they went to the safe house and figured out that Malik was the reason why the princess was kind of captured, he ends Hodge and someone else end up finding him in a place that he was hiding, and Hodge, Colin Firth, ends up dying in the 4th episode.
Oh, so no more Colin Firth.
Yeah, he's about to get shot by Malik is about to get shot by Hodge, and then he ends up poisoning Hodge, and then suddenly he drops dead. And
Now,
I was glad that TV show was finally able to shock me with the biggest name dying, because most of the time, I don't want to give away too many TV shows, you have places like Mayor of Kingstown or Big Sky that kill off the main character in like the first episode, the biggest name,
right.
or they keep him around till the season finale. This happened in the middle of the show.
And like people have compared this like I guess the energy to Kingsman.
Mhm.
Would you agree with that? Kind of like an action mystery.
I can see where they're coming from with that. I
Do
would
you
say
think
it's
that they're going to take it to the extreme Kingsman level and bring back Colin Firth next and just have him with an eye
well,
patch?
he does get another paycheck because he shows up in episode 5, but I don't think that there's going to be any umbrella that he knows how to use
I
as
mean,
a
I've seen
fighting
The
tool.
Night Manager, and they brought back Hugh Laurie after he got shot.
Colin Firth looked very much dead. I think Hodge is not coming back for the TV
They
show.
had Hugh Laurie on a slab, and they confirmed he was dead. And then by the end of the season, hello.
Maybe in a dream sequence.
Yes.
But episode 5 is when the show starts to incorporate a horror kind of genre to the show. People talked about that because for episodes like kind of 5 and through I'd say episode 7, there is a very, very dark story being told. This is when Sherlock realizes that B is still alive and that the father really had faked her death to gain Cordelia's fortune.
And in the flashbacks, it was kind of confusing how I get that Sherlock thinks that she drowned. He blames himself. But
Right.
then the mom also blames herself for something about a fire, or at least the dad tried to say to be that she had been pulled away from her family because her mom tried to kill her or something.
Yeah, I mean, like, what we had seen that Silas had already been kind of an iffy character. He was lying about his finances, and then, like, whenever Sherlock was talking to him about B's death, it always seemed like the details were a little murky. And
So
then
you're saying that Silas and not in flashbacks, but in the present storyline, young Sherlock
yeah.
and Silas had scenes before he found out that his dad was evil. Because I thought that like the first time they saw each other was when he saw his dad doing the presentation. that showed like opium or
Oh,
whatever.
yeah, no,
It
that
was well
happened.
before that.
Yeah, no, the episode 5, like, I think it's really primarily just Cordelia, Silas, and Sherlock. But
Okay.
they realize, yeah, that it ends up being that B is probably still alive because when Sherlock ends up digging up the corpse in the back,
What a strange thing to do.
well, he was trying to figure out what was going on and that the arm wasn't broken like B's was when she was found, when her body was
I know,
found.
but imagine he was wrong, which I know he never is, but like, and you just dug up your dead sister's bones. That would be kind of traumatic.
At that point, with all the clues that
Did
he had gathered in that episode with Moriarty, there was a very big chance of him being
did
right.
Moriarty help him dig up his
I think he
possibly
was
dead
there.
sister?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
And so in episode 6, it ends up being that Silas, much like the rest of the series, he always ends up almost getting caught through episodes 6 through 8, but he ends up escaping. He leaves before they're able to really get him. And then it's just a full-on chase because now suddenly instead of the professors even being really a storyline, it's more about them trying to figure out if B is still alive and trying to get to Silas. And I
Yes.
like
And then like is this when they follow him to
Paris.
Paris?
Yes, I really liked episode 6 because it was when all the main people end up going to Paris. You have Sherlock, Moriarty, and Mycroft.
Mycroft.
Mycroft is tracking Malik still. And then Xiao Wei, she escaped an episode, like right after she showed where the safe house was. And then she ends up stealing an invitation and goes to Paris. And then that's Malik and Silas are already in Paris where they're showing, yeah, in the underground bunker that really what the professors and what they have been working on is like an odorless gas that is able to kill people like within seconds.
Yes.
And
So
it's
there's a weapon. At the same time, it seems like he's also selling opium.
yeah.
So like both of those things aren't great. It's funny because like if you look at the Irregulars, do you remember that series?
Yes.
Sherlock was kind of predisposed to just being on the couch the entire time because he was high on drugs.
Yeah.
And in the books, the original books, he was taking cocaine. He was like freebasing cocaine all the
I
time.
remember Sherlock had him as a drug taker as well, I think.
Oh, okay. And so like it's funny how he's not here.
Yeah.
So maybe like his dad's business gets him into it eventually, but like not so far. And so that's what his dad's world is absorbed in. They find out about that and they start chasing him, right?
Well, yeah, this is inside the place, and even though Xuan or Xiao Wei, she has the gun, she's about to shoot Silas. Sherlock steps in front of the gun, gets shot, and that's where episode 6 ended. Like I said, episode 6 I felt like had the most going on. There was even a funny scene with the cows like kind of coming as a blockade because police were about to catch Sherlock and Moriarty and Cordelia. So it just felt like episode 6. I felt like they got the most done, and that was probably my favorite of the whole show.
And then they head to Constantinople.
Yeah, so episode 7, Sherlock ends up surviving, and they realize that the nerve agent was originally a British government weapon tested on Xiao Wei, which explained why she wants Malik to Xiao Wei's people.
Yes.
So that's why she wants Malik to die. And they come to an agreement, which leads them to Constantinople. And then in episode 8, it's all about how her.
Well, the agreement is we're going to trade you in because Sherlock's dad realizes that he's being hunted.
Right.
He's like, you give her up, I will give you your sister.
I definitely jumped.
and then what ends up happening at the very end there is that he puts out a fake sister.
Yeah, so this was like it's swelling music in the background. You're supposed to. She's so happy.
I
to
love
see
how
the
the mom is the
family.
one who recognized.
Yeah, she was like, "Mother, I'm so glad to see you." And the mom stops for a quick second and is like, "This is not B.
Let me see your face.
This is not B. What what is this?" And then it ends up being that they didn't cross Xiao Wei. They give her the gun, but Silas ends up escaping at the
More
end
like
of it.
Xiao Wei gets away.
Yeah.
Silas is the one who like kind of puts everybody else by gunpoint and sort of takes them to his own lair.
But at the end of that scene, at the end of episode 7, that's when we see that B has kind of been manipulated by Silas because we see the actual B, but she holds Mycroft and Sherlock at gunpoint.
Well, that's got to be the biggest reveal of the series is that B has been relevant the entire series so far. Did you recognize her as soon as she popped in there? Like you were like, oh, that's the girl who was like the assistant to Colin Firth's character.
No, I didn't, but I thought that was probably the best twist that they had. Because at first, I thought that the only twist they were going to have was that B was, like, actually alive the whole entire time, but when they showed that, I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I was not expecting that."
Because I think Moriarty and her had probably flirted before that,
I think so, like, episode 3 or something, yeah.
and so when they
Moriarty
end up hooking up in the last episode, it makes more sense.
Well, there was even a funny thing in episode 6 where Moriarty seemed to be going after Cordelia, and Sherlock was kinda mad about that, Sherlock's mom, but yeah.
That's weird. Yeah.
In episode 8, that's when Mycroft, he starts negotiating with the father, talking about how he can let the father go if they give him
I know, but
information.
this is like that's all I saw the last 2 episodes, and that
Yeah,
was all sort of like, kerfuffle that was all made up so that, like, their ultimate plan was that they were gonna track the dad down, and Mycroft wasn't gonna be evil or anything like
right.
that, and that, Shu-An would be able to get a Silas as soon as they convinced Beatrice that that their dad is evil,
And
right?
convincing Beatrice took no time at all. It took, like, literally 1 scene, it
It
seemed
makes a
like.
little bit more sense when you filled in the gap for episode 5, where you were saying that Sherlock and his dad had time to commiserate with one another.
Right.
Because the way it plays out, if you don't know about that, is that, like, after having such an allegiance to his daughter, where he literally practically raised her for the last few years and sent her on this hidden mission,
Well, yeah.
he was willing to just throw her under the bus and let Sherlock take over. But now that I know that he talked to Sherlock for as long as he did in the previous episodes, he was able to see his genius and identify that. That's why he was willing to say, you know what, you're the best of the 3 kids that I have, and I want you to continue my legacy.
But why don't you think that it was a little fast the way that she was convinced?
Well, she heard him say that to Sherlock, like, "I'm
Right.
ready to get rid of your sister and she can go home, but you gotta be my heir apparent," or what have you, "and we'll do this together." And I don't think that's very convincing to Sherlock at all, at least it's not shown to be.
It reminded me, a little bit of Bill Gates in South Park
Right.
because he gives the same type of
And
speech.
you have a parallel thing going on with Moriarty in the last 2 episodes where Sherlock is kind of becoming more he's gone from being a petty thief to, like, fully being a moral guy
Right.
who's like, "I don't feel comfortable doing that. I wanna be a family dude. I want to help my mom. I wanna bring my sister back
And
home."
Moriarty,
And
he's
yeah.
it's funny because they almost switched, positions because it seemed like Sherlock was traumatized for the longest time. Moriarty seems to be traumatized because he ended up killing someone when they were in Paris, I
He's
think.
being traumatized by the fact that he's not traumatized by the fact that he just killed someone.
Yeah.
He's like, "Why am I not feeling emotion? Why am I feeling glee?"
I think secretly what it is just, like, obviously, they're trying to set him up to be evil still, but I think he is feeling it. He's just not feeling it the way that he thought he was going to. I know he gave his reasonings for being like, "I actually enjoyed it," but I don't know if that was really the
Well,
case.
Shuan's like, he's like, "How does it feel? Like, why am I feeling this way?" And Shuan's like, "You're supposed to be feeling this way." And he's like, "But I'm not,"
Yeah.
like that thing. And then follow that with how he goes from kind of being Sherlock's number 2, his Watson,
Right.
but he then starts to really, really, really feel a grudge at that. And I know that's hinted at a little bit earlier where he doesn't like being seen as a secondary, but he does realize Sherlock's genius and how he's never going to probably be able to trounce that. And so by the very end,
Right,
and well,
let's
no, because this doesn't really affect the dad's storyline as much. But when he does start to show that he wants to distance himself from Sherlock and, like, maybe go off with B or something like that,
yeah.
it makes sense because it's already like the first indicators that he realizes his only means of success by himself, where he will be credited solely by himself, is if he breaks that bond.
Well, and it's not like Sherlock starts to pick up on those indicators by the end of the episode. That's why I wanted to get to kind of the climax of the whole series.
Right. So we're left with the fact that they're all stuck at the dad's place in
Right.
Constantinople. The next morning, Mycroft has made up this story, sort of, that he's going to or he's going to buy the dad's killing weapon,
Right. The
this
gas.
gas, by the British government if he agrees not to sell to anyone else. And the dad goes off to the caves to pick up the
And
gas.
that's where everyone decides to follow him and kind of track him to the place.
Yeah,
And
there's a
that's
little bit of few scenes where they're like looking around everywhere and stuff. But
and
yeah,
I enjoyed the shootouts that they had. Xiao Wei, she was finally able to get her revenge on Professor Malik. Really, though, this leads to the cave being blown up, and then
right. I think Shuan makes the decision halfway through once she's been able to kill off everybody except for Silas.
Mhm.
Like he's the last one. She's like, no one should ever have this ability to kill so many people. Let's blow up the cave.
right.
They use what's already in there to blow it up. I mean, there's a lot of caustic material that all they need to do is light on fire.
And that's when Silas, he's still taking off. This reminded me the most of 1883 with kind of the horse chase scene because he's on one of the carriages, but then Beatrice, Sherlock, and Xiao Wei, they're chasing after him. Finally, it leads to a place
He's
where
on a horse. He's not on a carriage.
oh well, that's what I meant. Like they're both on horses and they're chasing him.
Yes.
He gets off the horse. He's badly hurt anyways. But Xiao Wei really wants to kill him, and so does B. But Sherlock steps in the way and is like, "No, we need justice," which we've kind of seen throughout this
I know, but
whole
also
time.
Sherlock should be able to tell that his dad's
Right.
about to die. Like that there's not really like they could get him to the best doctor of 1871. That's not going to help. He's going to get infection and die like immediately.
Yeah,
So
and from the way that because the dad ends up supposedly committing suicide, do you think he's still alive? Because
hey, they could bring him back.
he gives Sherlock his handkerchief, and then we see him fall down the mountain, but we never see his dead body or anything.
It's like a final clue to Sherlock. He's like, I knew you were the good one or something like that.
I
And he-
really enjoyed this scene, yeah, because he goes back home. He's able to piece together that the handkerchief, like it's actually his dad's final words.
it's a clue. Yeah.
yeah, and he opens up the Charles Darwin book and he
Well,
sees a
you're
key.
jumping ahead. So, like the handkerchief, let's just go ahead and solve the mystery here. So, it's like a honeycomb pattern. He goes to the bees. He's like natural selection, something about survival of the fit. Then he's like, I'm going to run over to the bookcase, takes out the thing, finds the key, and then Mycroft's like, knock it off.
That was my favorite part where he's like, "Can you just not do this?" And then Sherlock is like, "You know what?" And he decides not to investigate any further. I thought that was really cool because again, Sherlock, especially like in the BBC, I know I keep comparing it to that, but he's always wanting a case, and here it's like so close to him that I think he even realized it wouldn't lead to anything good.
And it goes against my point of him being like completely guided by morals now, because he is sort of still the same person who would steal that key. Because later on we see he confronts Moriarty, who's about to make a deal with the sister.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, and-
Moriarty, he kept also some of the formula.
Well, yeah. So Moriarty, he's thinking, well, if I'm going to separate myself, I'm going to have to be intimidating. I'm going to have to make my own nuke. So he's like kept the formula to create this poison gas.
And Sherlock, when they meet at a cafe later on by the very end, it's the final scene, kind of lets him know. He's like, I know that you still have some of it.
Right. And so when Sherlock says that, and then he pulls out the key and he's like, but I also have this other mystery that's going on. Like, it's leading you to say, okay, maybe they can have another season or so where they're still friends. But ultimately, this relationship is destined for tragedy.
Again, you know that's not going to end well. Moriarty is the antithesis of, I feel like, a foil character, almost as much as like the Mandarin
Well,
or
that's
Iron.
like a double negative there, but yeah.
Well, I just meant more in the sense that, like, whenever I think about, like, a character's most evil villain, I always use Moriarty as kind of, like, a similarity. So
Yes.
it's like seeing them work together was a weird change of pace for this show.
And Donal, whatever his face is, has gotten a lot of credit for that. Like, people have been, I think, more a fan of him than even Sherlock's character.
Yeah, no, I thought that he was probably the best, like, actor there. I
Okay.
was like, I think he did the best job.
Even
But
better than Colin Firth. The one comparison that I feel like has to be brought up because it's like almost in a similar realm. You talked about Sherlock and Daughter earlier. Who did that star? David Thewlis,
David
right?
Thewlis,
What
yeah.
did David Thewlis also do this year? And Thomas Brody Sangster, of course.
oh, the Artful Dodger. Yeah, the
Now,
Artful
that takes place a couple years before this in Australia.
Same exact tone, same exact editing. I'm even somewhat surprised that Guy Ritchie hasn't worked on the Artful Dodger
A
because
lot less romance.
I
I mean, Moriarty does
I don't know,
have
I mean-
sex with Beatrice, but besides that, I mean, Thomas Brody Sangster and whatever
Yeah.
her face is in that.
That is true,
series.
but when it comes to, again, the tone, like the mystery, the comedy that they have, these seem like almost the exact same show.
Okay.
And I also had the
Well, also the fact that, like, they're both thieves that have gone on to, like, one's a genius, just in decrypting, like, different facts and stuff, and the other one
It's a
is
doctor.
is a doctor. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I felt like there were also hints of Monsieur Spade in there as well. I could
Sure.
see, how both Sherlock Holmes and how the Maltese Falcon main character, I could see how they were similar.
Right, but he's, like, super old in that, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's
Yeah, no,
Monsieur Spade
in
is
terms of age, I was talking
post
more
Maltese
about
Falcon.
yeah, I was talking more about just how they kind of are able to figure out things. There were things that I liked a lot. I like the different genres because it was mystery, it was drama, there was comedy, action, the horror element I was not expecting, but they were actually able to pull
And
off
I didn't
pretty
see the
well.
horror episode, so
Again, yeah,
that's I'll have to go back for that one.
that was mostly episode 5.
And then, the fact that they're all bilingual, that was
Yep.
impressive to me. I was like, it didn't seem like the actors were struggling, especially even the mom when she went in there and she started speaking a different language,
Yeah.
so they probably cast for that. Um,
I thought that the action was well done. It's toned down Guy Ritchie, which I know he's not one of the creators, but I could still tell it was him. There's a lot of cool like tracking shots. I think one of my favorite animations that they had was when they showed this nice hand drawn look of Paris in episode 6. There's also even a moment where they open up a book and they start reading all these different animals, and the cartoon animals start appearing on screen.
mhm.
There may not be any markers with the squeegee sound in the background, but I did think that it still worked, and I enjoyed seeing those parts. Colin Firth dying so early on, the acting being good, those were all things that I thought worked.
So, how would you compare it to Guy Ritchie's Sherlock Holmes, like the 2009 version? Because that takes place in 1890. So, there's about
Yeah.
19 years, right, for them to get him to that place. However, they've already stated that this is not really the same.
Right. Yeah, it wouldn't make sense if it was. I think that the first Sherlock Holmes film is better than this, but I really didn't like the second Guy Ritchie Sherlock film, so I thought that this was better than
One
that.
one thing I didn't know about the film series was that right before any character, or right after any character dies, I think it's before or after, they always show a crow. Like,
Hmm.
that's just a known thing. I don't think they did the same thing here, but yeah, reception for this has been, positive, but polarized.
Right, because there's not one thing that happens aside from, but even B being alive wasn't that surprising. That wasn't somewhat predictable. The only reason why even Hodge's death worked was because it was Colin Firth. Had it just been a normal actor, I would have been like, that's not really that surprising, which is majorly disappointing because Guy Ritchie, like I said, he knows how to divert expectations. So the fact that there really wasn't one twist ever, aside from who B ended up being, that really ever got me was very disappointing, I thought.
Maybe you will agree with the Hollywood Reporter, where they said the middle of the season isn't just dumb, it's dull and overextended. But then the
Yes.
show picks up again for the last two episodes. Now, it did
Yeah,
sound like you liked episode 6 and 5,
I did.
but
Well,
episode 3 and 4, maybe not so much.
it's just the fact that I think whenever they showed the twist, the show was always making it so big, going back to earlier moments that we had seen. And it
There
was like
was a lot of repetition.
I was already able to tell where this was going from like the first second that they showed it.
Like, they would
Also,
repeat lines like Shuan would often say, "I'm not a princess," and then
yeah,
Sherlock would often say, "I wasn't a porter,"
mhm,
right? He was like, "I was a scout, not a porter."
a lot of times, yeah. And it just felt like there was way too much going on. They took 2 seasons worth of story and tried to just cram it into one
Interesting.
season, it
I don't
feels like.
usually hear that it was too much plot. That's usually a good thing. New York
Also, it just felt like kind of off-putting too, right? Like Batman and the Joker, if they were to start taking down like villains, Moriarty
I
and
actually like
Sherlock.
that though. It's kind of funny. The fact that, like, because Moriarty, yeah, the only real introduction I had to him was in the other Sherlock series, and that one after season 2 got so strange.
Well, it felt like the creature and Dr. Frankenstein if they were to start working together as well. So those were things that I felt were kind of
But
off-putting.
they do work together. Dr. Frankenstein made the creature, or the yeah.
Yeah, but do you remember the end of that story?
Yeah, yes,
Do you
but I'm
know
saying
remember the things the
you're
monster
talking
did?
about the Oscar Isaac version?
I was talking about any version of
Okay.
Frankenstein.
All right. So New York Times said in young Sherlock, he's a Gen Z heartthrob. Speaking of not Irons, the other guy, Fines. Yeah.
Fines, yeah.
The funny thing is that the Guardian said almost the exact opposite. They said the detective in Guy Ritchie's geezerish caper has the charisma of a naff waiter. It would have been such a better title and so much more scathing had they said wafer. A NAF wafer. I would have loved that, but they said waiter, and that was less funny. And then Variety said Guy Ritchie's young Sherlock delivers a perfect origin story. So, like I said, polarizing, but ultimately, I think that it was a positive reception. Does your ultimate rating follow suit?
This show is decent, but it's not going to win any awards. I will be giving this a 6.5 out of 10.
Okay. Will you watch another season of it?
Probably not, no.
All right. Well, thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.